Hello, welcome to a new asynchronous session. Today we're going to cover an architecture, form, or function. You can find the related documents in the folder of event terms on our course page, and then get into Unit 5 of 7, Science, and then you will see the folder entitled Architecture, Form, or Function. Okay, and let's begin with the quiz. And here you may do the quiz because you know that vocabulary and building is very important for understanding the recordings in a better way. Here you see a text and including some words written in bold. Here does form follow function, and you see form and has something to do with the way something looks, shape of something, but function and to is the job that and and something is designed. You see, so here what does form of function means? You can make a correlation form and how or the way in which a building looks should relate what the building is designed for. Okay, and when you read the text, and I hope you won't have difficulties and in understanding, but form of building, you see, should be to do with shape, and the function should be purpose. And please do the rest of the questions and on your own. Okay, and here, and you can download the handouts, and which I have already downloaded on my computer. Now I will let you the first part of the lecture and the short one. You will listen and you will match the first part of each sentence with the correct second part. Okay?
Okay. Settle down. I have a lot to cover today. Okay? This morning, I want to talk about a very important person who really influenced modern architecture, and that's Louis Sullivan. Yes, Louis Sullivan. You've heard of him? Yeah? Most people who have studied architecture know something about him. Okay. Well, in today's class, I'm going to cover some of the big ideas we got from Louis Sullivan because he's going to be very important to us in this class. All right, let me start with a little background. Sullivan was born in Boston, but soon moved to Chicago in 1873. And that's important because many of Sullivan's great buildings are in Chicago. Now, Sullivan had many ideas about skyscrapers. And the thing you should know about Sullivan is that he was a true visionary. By visionary, I mean someone who has the ability to imagine things for the future. He thought of things before anyone else. So, Sullivan had all these really new ideas about, for example, about the way to design skyscrapers. He believed that the skyscraper should celebrate and show off its height. So what I mean is the skyscraper for Sullivan should be tall and also be decorated with lots of attractive shapes like plant shapes and other pretty decorations. They should not be just a tall, plain box. Sullivan is most famous for one particular idea. He said that in architecture, form follows function. Let me repeat that. Form follows function. So, the purpose of a building should help the architect create the design of the building. You get the picture? The building should look like what it is, what its purpose is. All right, I'd like you to read more about Sullivan in chapter 17 of your textbook and be prepared to discuss some of his buildings next time. Good.
Okay, and you have heard the recording, and now I will show you the transcript and to help you understand and how and we should just match the first part with the suitable second part. Okay, and here and the Sullivan. Okay, and here and you see, and this is the first part of the lecture. And here, when we just take a look quickly, we see Louis Sullivan, and according to him, and the you see skyscrapers, and he's a visionary guy, and it has new ideas. You see for designing skyscrapers, and should celebrate. You see a skyscraper, and show off its height. You see celebrate and show off to make something look attractive or to prove how attractive something is. And so you see, according to him, skyscrapers should be tall and should be decorated with different shapes, and and he has one particular idea. You see, form follows function, and which means there should be a clear a situation or link between and how a building looks and what it is designed for. Okay, let's get back to the handout. So Sullivan believed that the skyscraper should celebrate, show off its height, and should be C. And Sullivan believed that and form follows function. Okay, Sullivan thought of things ahead of anyone else, and we can understand from the phrase visionary from the adjective. Okay, because if you are visionary, you have the capability of thinking things ahead of anyone else. Okay, and you may pause the recording at this part, and you have some seconds to uh, take a look at this task, and then you may listen to the recording, the first lecture, one more time. Okay, you will see, and this part and requires you to select the phrases or statements which is about topic. Okay, for topic, you know what the paragraph is about, or transition to move with a new idea, a new concept, the definition, okay, the example and explanation. So you need to find out, or you need to select and regarding phrases and words which reflects topic, new idea, mean transition and definition, example and explanation. Okay, and let me show you uh, here, from here, that you see, and this morning I want to talk about, she says, I want to talk about, this is the topic of talk, the recording, and I'm going to cover some of the big ideas. So I'm going to cover and is another phrase or another statement that is used to convey topic. And let me start with or now and or about transition. Okay, and by visionary I mean, you see the definition what does visionary mean? It means, or it is used to define someone who has the ability to imagine things for the future. So by visionary, I mean is to do with definition. For example, could be counted as a way to exemplify situation. So what I mean is an explanation. You see, you provide something, and according to Sullivan, skyscraper should celebrate and show off its height. So what I mean is means to go into details to explain what you mean. Okay, and now next part is about note-taking strategies. And here you see an excerpt from the short lecture and that you have listened. And one student's notes. You see, note taking, and I always stress the importance of note taking ability. And in other ways, you need to increase your ability of paraphrasing and summarizing and recapping. You may use symbols, you may write in shorthand. And here you see, you can remember the short excerpt. And you see the topic is I'm going to cover some big ideas from Louis Sullivan. So big ideas of Louis Sullivan. And LS, the initials of his name and surname. So visionary, you see, keywords. Try to catch the keywords while not taking. And the visionary, okay, and someone with, you see, great ability to imagine things for future. You may use symbols, and you may note and down in shorthand. And his ideas, LS ideas, skyscrapers celebrate height. And you see, going into details should be tall and instead of and use plus, decorated and with shapes. And famous for the saying, right? Form follows function, and in parentheses, and you just you see a note taken to uh, make the meaning of this phrase, this saying clear. Purpose indicates shape. Okay, you may try it on your own. You may take your own notes, but always keep in mind that you should pay close attention to summarizing with keywords. And you may find ways of noting down in shorthand. You may use symbols and other things. Okay, and here you may use your own strategies. And you now I will let you listen the whole lecture. Please note down about background on modern architecture. Okay, and Frank Gehry, and two topics you have to about which you are going to note down. Okay, and now before making a start with listening the main lecture, just please and take a quick look at the tasks. Okay, what does the lecture say about modern architecture? So try to catch the details about modern architecture, four examples of modern architecture, and purpose. You see the name of the building and what it is designed for, what its purpose is. What was Louis Sullivan's famous idea? The idea and its meaning. Frank Gehry, what does he believe about form and function? Does he agree or does he disagree? How does the professor describe the building in Bilbao? Okay, what does he think about the building? How well does the museum in Bilbao follow the idea that forms follows function? Does it fit the idea or does it reject? What is the focus of the next lesson? Okay, and first note down, and then you will use and your notes to make your answers. Okay?
Good afternoon, everyone. Before we get started, remember you'll have a quiz for the next class, right? Today, we begin our discussion of modern architecture. And this afternoon, I'll be discussing a very general concept that is important for our understanding of modern architecture. As I discuss this concept, I'm going to give you a little background on modern architecture. Then later, I'll move on to focus on one giant architect of our times, and that's Frank Gehry. First, let me give you a tiny little bit of background on modern architecture. We all know that a building does more than simply give us shelter. We can all think of some buildings that are just really beautiful or really interesting. This tells us that sometimes architecture can also be art. Let me explain what I mean. Let's take a look at these famous buildings just to get an idea. Here's a building by the famous architect Antoni Gaudi. Take a look at this. Everyone loves this building. It's an apartment building, but from our point of view today, it certainly is more than just a shelter for people. It's also very pleasing to the eye. To me and many other people, it's very fun to look at. It's truly a work of art. Isn't it fabulous? Here's one of the tallest buildings in the world. It's a skyscraper in Taipei. It's called Taipei 101. Most people who see this building love it. Not because it's an office building and not only because it's so tall, it's also incredibly beautiful. Don't you think so? I think I've made my point that architecture has a purpose, but it's also something that can be very beautiful at the same time. It can please the eye. This is an important point. All right, this brings me to the key concept for today. In modern architecture, let's say architecture from 1900 to the present, there's been this big question. What is the relationship between a building's form and its function? This was the question asked by the world famous American architect named Louis Sullivan. Sullivan believed quite strongly that form follows function. But what was Sullivan's point? Well, Sullivan wanted to say that the purpose of a building should tell the architect how to design the building. And consequently, people should be able to know what its purpose was just by looking at it. So, most architects agreed with Sullivan and followed his idea. For the next several decades, I want to move on to show you how architects have changed their attitude about form and function. This is very interesting. In the last, let's say, 25 years, many architects, many famous architects, have ignored what Sullivan said. They've chosen to go against the idea that form follows function. And they've built some fantastic buildings. This leads us to my favorite modern architect. And he's very famous for not believing that form follows function. His name is Frank Gehry. Let me show you his most famous design. This is the Guggenheim Museum in Bilbao, in Spain. It's a very well-known museum. There's famous art inside, paintings and statues inside. But do you think this looks like a museum? I don't think so. Take a look at these curves. These round shapes. Gehry designed this, some people say, so there are no real corners, no straight lines, as you can see. When people visit the museum, what do they notice? They notice the shiny curves, the reflection of the water. But they might not immediately think, this is a museum. What I'm trying to show you here is that there is very little connection between the form of the building, all these curves, all the shiny metal, and the purpose of the building, to show the art to people. It's an art museum, but it doesn't really look like one. It's its own piece of art. Since we have a few more minutes, let's analyze another Frank Gehry building. Here it is. This building is very playful, very fun, and it really catches the eye. But I have a surprise for you. This is actually the Computer Science Research Center at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT, the most famous university for science and technology in the world. So it's a very serious place. So again, we see Frank Gehry making a kind of game out of the whole form and function idea. He's being ironic, meaning he's actually doing the opposite of what he claims to be doing, designing a building for a serious purpose. You could say he's really twisted the form and function idea. And he's had a lot of fun along the way. This place is really crazy. I love it. I think I better wrap it up now. Next time, we'll focus on one type of modern building, the skyscraper. See you next week.
Okay, and you have some time to finalize your answers. And let's see the answers on the transcript. And you see the first one, what does the lecturer say about modern architecture? And here for modern architecture, you see it starts with, let me give you a little background on modern architecture. And it does more than simply gives us shelter. You mean that, and do you know that shelter means accommodation, but building is something more than shelter. And the other information is beautiful or really interesting. And the last one should be architecture can also be well art. Okay, and so the first, let's say you may put 3 points. That's it. Modern architecture is beautiful and it more than a shelter. And as the last one here, you may see it is just an art. Okay, and the next question, and you need 4 examples of modern architecture and name of buildings and their purposes. Okay, 4 buildings and 4 purposes. Let's see. And here a building by Antoni Gaudi. The name of the building is Antoni Gaudi's building, and its function is being an apartment building. Okay, Antoni Gaudi's building, purpose, you should write apartment building. And the next building's name is Taipei 101, and its purpose is it's an office building. Okay, and the third building is Guggenheim Museum. You see the name of the building, and its purpose is being a museum. And the last one is the building of Computer Science Research Center at the Massachusetts Institute of Technologies, and the name of the building and the function, you see, and it is Science and Research Center. Okay, and let's continue with question 3. What was Louis Sullivan's famous idea and what does it mean? Okay, and his famous idea is form follows function. He believes this idea, and the meaning of this idea is the purpose of a building should tell the architect how to design the building. Okay, or you may say form and how a building looks and should be decided and according to what a building is designed for. Okay, and next question is, what does Frank Gehry believe about form and function? Here and is another modern architect, Frank Gehry, and here you see okay, and he's very famous for not believing that form follows function. So he doesn't believe the idea that form follows function. Okay, he rejects the idea. And how does the professor describe the building in Bilbao? Okay, let's see. And according to the speaker and according to the professor, and she doesn't think that this building looks like a museum. And actually, and it has, you see, curves and round shapes, and there are no real corners, no straight lines, and sometimes it looks like a ship. And she doesn't think, and the building and looks like a museum. Okay, and next one, how well does the museum in Bilbao follow the idea that form follows function? And let's see, and there is a, you see, there is a very little connection between the form of the building and its function. So you may write, and it doesn't fit the idea that form follows function, because there is a very little connection between the form and function of the building. And the last one, what is the focus of the next lesson? And here, in the last statement, we may figure out that we will focus on one type of modern building, skyscraper. Okay, and as a last exercise, I will let you listen the recording for dictation, and you will hear 7 separate statements, and I will show you them after the recording.
1.
Today, we begin our discussion of modern architecture. Today, we begin our discussion of modern architecture.
2.
Let me explain what I mean. Let me explain what I mean.
3.
It's truly a work of art. It's truly a work of art.
4.
This is an important point. This is an important point.
5.
This is very interesting. This is very interesting.
6.
This leads us to my favorite modern architect. This leads us to my favorite modern architect.
7.
Let me show you his most famous design.
Okay, and let me show you the statements. Okay, thanks for your attention. See you on a new asynchronous session.